When my daughter died in my arms at 45, I never imagined the real pain would begin at her own funeral. That's when the man who abandoned her 5 years ago showed up dressed in black, demanding the $40 million she left me. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. My name is Robert Vance. I'm 75 years old, and for the last few months, I lived through the greatest hell of my life, watching a relentless illness slowly take my only daughter, Clara. She was my everything since her mother passed away when she was just 15. I raised her alone, worked day and night to give her the best education, and I was filled with immense pride when she became a wildly successful curator and entrepreneur with her own acclaimed chain of art galleries in San Francisco and London. Recently, Clara called me into her private room. Her eyes, which once shone with artistic determination, now reflected the quiet serenity of someone prepared for the final curtain. "Dad," she said, her voice weak, but with an unwavering certainty, "I need you to know something very important. I've been getting everything ready for you." She handed me a sealed envelope with documents that would change my life forever. When I opened that envelope at home that night, I couldn't believe the scale of what I was seeing. Clara had amassed a fortune of $40 million through her businesses and strategic investments. In her will, drafted impeccably with Mr. Wallace, our longtime family counsel, she named me as her sole universal heir. "Dad, you were a father and a mother to me. No one else deserves what I built with so much effort." She had written this in a deeply personal letter that came with the legal documents, a gesture that brought tears and a profound sense of forgiveness for any past parenting mistakes. Clara passed away one early morning. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. In that agonizing moment, I felt a vital part of my soul leave with her. The next few days were a blur of deep, agonizing pain, endless paperwork, and the difficult preparations for her ceremony. At the funeral, the grand cathedral was overflowing with friends, gallery owners, and business associates. I was in the front row, completely devastated by my grief, when someone touched my shoulder. When I turned, I saw a tall man, about 50 years old, dressed in an elegant black suit, with crocodile tears streaming down his face. "Robert," he said with a voice that pretended to be broken. "I'm Ethan Shaw. I'm so very sorry for the loss of our dear Clara." For a moment, my mind froze. Our dear Clara? This man, Ethan, had the unbelievable nerve to show up after 5 years of absolute abandonment and speak as if he had been an active part of my daughter's life. Ethan had been Clara's husband for just 2 years. When she told him she was pregnant, he vanished overnight, leaving her completely alone with their marriage debts and a pregnancy that tragically ended in a miscarriage due to the overwhelming stress. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" I asked in a low voice, struggling mightily to maintain my composure in that sacred, hallowed place. "I came to say goodbye to the woman I deeply loved," he answered, dabbing his synthetic tears with a white handkerchief. Clara and I had our issues, but she was always truly special to me. What ignited a fire of anger deep inside me was watching how he performed in front of the other attendees. He deliberately positioned himself in the second row, directly behind me, sobbing in a truly theatrical manner. Several people who were unaware of his history approached him to offer comfort, mistakenly thinking he was the grieving widower. He even walked up to the casket during the final farewell, placed his hand on the polished wooden surface, and murmured something I couldn't distinguish. After the church service concluded, we proceeded to the Golden Gate Cemetery. The entire journey, Ethan remained conspicuously close to the immediate family, acting as if he held every right to be there. His behavior seemed increasingly strange and terrifyingly, deeply calculated. It was not the genuine grief of someone who had suffered a profound loss, but something entirely artificial and performative. As they slowly lowered the casket, Ethan approached me again. "Robert, we urgently need to talk after this. There are important things we need to discuss regarding Clara and, well, regarding the future." Those words, spoken at the graveside, sent an icy chill of dread straight down my spine. The future? What possible future was a man talking about who had abandoned my daughter at the absolute hardest moment of her life? In that chilling instant, I knew with complete certainty that Ethan hadn't come to the funeral simply to say goodbye. He had other, sinister plans, and a deep, visceral feeling told me they were not going to be good for Clara's cherished memory, or for the fragile peace I so desperately required in that crushing moment of pain. After the burial concluded, while the other guests headed to the reception at my sister Lucy's house, Ethan waited for me conspicuously by his sleek black luxury sedan. His entire attitude had shifted completely. He was no longer faking the exaggerated, theatrical grief from the funeral. Now he wore a cold, calculating smile that immediately set my nerves on edge. "Robert, I think it's time we spoke frankly. Man," he said, dramatically lighting a cigarette. "Clara was legally my wife, and under state law, I have undeniable rights to her entire estate." I was absolutely frozen with righteous anger. This pathetic excuse for a man thought he could reappear after 5 years of total silence and claim what Clara had painstakingly built with her own relentless sweat, genius, and sacrifice. "Ethan, you and my daughter finalized your divorce 5 years ago. You have absolutely no right to anything," I replied, forcing myself to remain outwardly calm, even though I was boiling with pure, molten rage inside. "Ah, but that's where your knowledge is flawed," he countered with that deeply arrogant smile. "I've been doing some dedicated research, and it turns out Clara never correctly finalized all the divorce paperwork and legal filings. Technically, we were still married in certain crucial legal aspects. My highly paid lawyers have confirmed that I can legally claim at least half of those $40 million she accumulated." I simply could not believe the blatant audacity of what I was hearing. This scoundrel had clearly been planning this meticulously for a long time. He knew about Clara's incredible fortune and had flown in like a vulture to claim his supposed share of the loot. "How dare you!" I finally yelled, completely losing my long-held composure for the first time. "You utterly abandoned my daughter when she desperately needed you most. You left her alone, pregnant and financially drowning in debt. You vanished like a contemptible coward. And now, after 5 years, you have the gall to come here talking about rights?" Ethan dramatically threw his cigarette onto the ground and looked at me with chilling coldness. "Look, Robert, I understand you're deeply hurting right now, but unfortunately, feelings don't magically change the law. Clara built that business empire. Yes, but when we were a couple, I also contributed heavily to the very start of her business. I possess documents to prove it." It was a bold-faced lie, and I knew it instantly. Clara had only started her first art gallery 3 years after the divorce, funded by a substantial loan that I myself had helped her secure. Ethan never invested a single, solitary dollar in my daughter's dreams. "Listen to me very carefully," he continued in a deeply threatening voice. "We can do this the easy way or the incredibly hard way. If you voluntarily give me my fair share, let's settle on 20 million. We can avoid a terribly long and publicly costly legal process that will undoubtedly tarnish Clara's sacred memory in every newspaper in the city." There it was, the true, disgusting face of Ethan Shaw. He wasn't just a callous opportunist, but a ruthless blackmailer willing to exploit my deceased daughter's good name to extort money. "Are you actually threatening me?" I asked, taking an aggressive step closer to him. "No, I'm simply offering you a dignified, civilized solution," he smoothly replied. "But if you'd prefer, the media finds out that the father of the successful entrepreneur Clara Vance is selfishly denying her grieving widower his rightful inheritance." He let the truly vile sentence hang menacingly in the cold air. At that precise, sickening moment, I vividly remembered the day Ethan abruptly left Clara. It was a cold night. Clara called me, crying hysterically, telling me she had arrived home to find a brief, callous note on the kitchen table. "I'm gone. This isn't working. Don't try to contact me." That was the entirety of his farewell. He didn't even possess the basic courage to say goodbye in person or offer any explanation for why he was running away when she needed unwavering support the most. In the difficult weeks that followed, Clara discovered that Ethan had cruelly emptied their joint bank account, stealing her $12,000 in savings intended to invest in her future business. He also left a pile of unpaid utility bills for the apartment they shared, forcing Clara to immediately take on debts she hadn't created. The most agonizing part was when Clara lost the baby shortly after. She desperately tried to contact Ethan to inform him of the tragedy, but he had already changed his phone number and blocked her completely on all social media platforms. My daughter had to go through the twin, crushing grief of losing her child and her marriage at the same time, all completely alone. "You know what, Ethan?" I said with a terrifying calmness I didn't know I possessed. "You're right about one thing. This can be done the easy way or the hard way. But I assure you, if you try for one single moment to tarnish my daughter's name with your repulsive lies, I will show you exactly what I'm capable of." Ethan let out a harsh, sarcastic laugh. "Are you seriously trying to scare me, old man? I'm 50, and you're 75. Furthermore, I have resources and legal connections you can't even begin to imagine. My offer remains firmly on the table. 20 million now, or 30 million after the inevitable trial, plus all the staggering legal fees it will cost me to definitively destroy your reputation. Get out of here immediately before I do something I will truly regret," I warned him, my voice a low, dangerous rumble. "You have exactly 1 week to think about my generous offer," he said, getting into his black sedan. "Next week, you'll receive the legal documents. I sincerely hope you reconsider your position because this is only just beginning." As I watched his expensive car quickly drive away, I felt an intense, burning mix of rage and unforgiving determination I hadn't experienced in decades. This miserable man actually thought he could take advantage of the profound pain of a father who had just lost his daughter. But he had fundamentally picked the wrong person. Clara had taught me to fight ruthlessly for what is right. And that was exactly what I was going to do. That night, in the crushing solitude of my home, surrounded by cherished photos of Clara from her childhood through to her final, brave days, I made a non-negotiable decision that would change absolutely everything. I wasn't going to give Ethan a single cent, and I would utilize every resource in my power to expose his truly vile intentions before the law. The day following my confrontation with Ethan, I immediately decided to start my own, focused investigation. I couldn't simply sit back waiting for his imminent legal threats. If this man had planned everything so precisely, I desperately needed to find out what else he was hiding beneath the surface. My first stop was the office of Mr. Wallace, the respected lawyer who had drafted Clara's will. Mr. Wallace, a man with vast experience in inheritance law, saw me immediately in his downtown office. "Robert, I am deeply sorry for your profound loss," he said, as he meticulously reviewed the documents Clara had signed. "I want you to know that your daughter's will is legally absolutely ironclad. She was incredibly specific in her final instructions and was in full command of her mental faculties when we drafted it. Mr. Wallace, I urgently need you to investigate Ethan Shaw. He claims he has rights to Clara's inheritance, but I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that he is lying." Mr. Wallace took careful notes as I recounted the disturbing cemetery conversation. "Let me check the divorce files. If I recall correctly, Clara was very clear about ensuring all legal ties were completely and irreversibly severed." While Mr. Wallace looked deeply into the legal aspects, I decided to immediately contact Mrs. Peterson, who had been Clara's loyal personal assistant for the last few years. Mrs. Peterson knew my daughter's business movements and personal contacts better than anyone alive. We met that afternoon at a discreet coffee shop near Clara's main gallery in the financial district. Mrs. Peterson, a woman of 40, had always been known for her loyalty and discretion, but that day I saw she was visibly nervous and restless. "Mr. Vance, there's something I absolutely need to tell you about Ethan," she said, constantly glancing around the room as if she were desperately afraid of being overheard. "For the last few months, that man has been actively trying to get close to Clara." "What do you mean, get close?" I asked, feeling a cold knot of dread tighten in my chest. "Late last year, he started aggressively calling the gallery office, asking specifically for Clara. At first, he used generic names, but I immediately recognized his voice because Clara had warned me about him years ago. When I told Miss Clara, she instructed me to hang up on him immediately if he ever called again. No exceptions." Mrs. Peterson continued to reveal devastating details that made my blood run instantly cold. "Earlier this year, Ethan showed up at the gallery offices in person. Clara wasn't there because she had started her intense chemotherapy, but he aggressively insisted on speaking to me. He repeatedly asked me about the company's financial status, how many galleries we currently operated, and if Clara had any major partners or investors." "And what did you tell him?" "Nothing, of course, Mr. Vance. But he kept pushing. He aggressively offered me $5,000 just to confirm if Clara was truly as successful as the financial newspapers claimed. I immediately threw him out of the office, but later I found out he had been asking the exact same intrusive questions at the bank, where Clara maintained her main accounts. This confirmed every single one of my worst suspicions. Ethan hadn't shown up at the funeral by mere chance or out of any genuine, lingering love for Clara. He had been meticulously preparing this entire, cruel scheme for months, coldly researching my daughter's financial situation while she was battling for her life against cancer. "Mrs. Peterson, do you have any concrete proof of these aggressive approaches?" "Yes, Mr. Vance. Clara asked me to record all office calls after Ethan's initial contact. I have the recordings safely saved on my personal computer. Those words were music to my ears, a desperate father's hymn. If Ethan had admitted his true, greedy intentions during those recorded calls, we would possess solid, undeniable evidence of his purely opportunistic, predatory behavior. The very next day, Mrs. Peterson brought me the damning recordings on a small USB drive. Listening to them at home, alone, I felt an agonizing mix of astonishment, profound sadness, and sheer disgust. In one of the recordings, Ethan, with chilling clarity, said, "Look, Mrs. Peterson, I know Clara is seriously sick. I just want to know if it's genuinely worth my time to try for a reconciliation. You understand what I mean? I'm certainly not going to waste my time if she has absolutely nothing left to offer me. In another recording, dated even closer to the end, Ethan was even more explicit in his avarice. I've heard persistent rumors that Clara has several millions stashed away. If that proves to be true, I think we could finally resolve all of our past issues. Everyone deserves a second chance at a fortune, especially when there's so much money on the line. But the most utterly revealing recording was one where Ethan called, asking directly about the will. Do you know if Clara has officially made a will? Because technically, if we're still married under some bizarre legal provision, I would automatically have legal rights to her estate, correct? Now, the pieces of Ethan's plan fit together perfectly in a horrifying mosaic. He had been coldly monitoring Clara's illness, patiently waiting for the moment of her death to dramatically appear as the grieving husband and claim the massive inheritance. It was a plan as utterly cruel as it was meticulously calculated. That same quiet evening, I received another crucial piece of information through Andrew Moore, an old business colleague with excellent contacts in the financial sector. Andrew confirmed, with devastating certainty, that Ethan was indeed in serious, immediate financial trouble. Robert, I've inquired around discreetly about Ethan Shaw. The man is absolutely bankrupt. He lost his consulting firm several years ago due to disastrous crypto investments and bad market timing. He also has staggering gambling debts at various city casinos totaling well over 100. The debt collectors are pressuring him mercilessly, and according to my contacts, he's absolutely desperate to acquire money fast. Everything now fit together perfectly. Ethan wasn't just a simple opportunist, but a desperate, cornered animal who saw Clara's death as his only potential financial salvation. He had staked his entire future on getting that inheritance, and that's precisely why he was so confident and arrogant with his legal threats. With all this undeniable information, I immediately called Mr. Wallace to schedule an urgent, private meeting. We now had solid, irrefutable evidence of Ethan's fraudulent character and predatory intentions, but we still needed to prepare a rock-solid legal strategy before he followed through on his threat to officially start the legal process. Later that week, as I was organizing all the documents and recorded evidence, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but when I answered, I instantly recognized Ethan's smug voice. Robert, I truly hope you've reconsidered my generous offer. Early next week, I'm officially filing the papers at the courthouse, and I assure you, it will be significantly more expensive for you than you can imagine. Last chance. $20 million now, and we can all walk away happy. Ethan, I replied firmly, my voice now completely devoid of fear and replaced by cold resolve. I think you're the one who should deeply reconsider your position. I've discovered some very interesting things about your true, vile intentions. There was a long, uncomfortable silence before he finally answered. I don't know what kind of foolish game you think you're playing, but I'm warning you, don't play games with me, old man. I have resources and contacts that can make your life extremely complicated. We'll see who truly has the better hand in this game, won't we? I said before definitively hanging up the phone. That night, for the first time since Clara's death, I slept peacefully. I knew the legal battle ahead would be intense, brutal, and public. But now I possessed the necessary weapons to defend my daughter's legacy and definitively unmask the true, repulsive intentions of this despicable opportunist. The following week, just as he had promised, Ethan followed through on his brazen threat. A courier knocked on my door, handing me an official envelope from the civil court. Opening it, I found a devastating 47-page lawsuit where Ethan claimed not only the $40 million inheritance, but also substantial damages for supposed malicious concealment of marital assets. His legal argument was twisted, predatory, but seemingly well-structured. He alleged that during his marriage to Clara, they had established a creative business collaboration that was never formally dissolved, and he aggressively claimed that Clara had used his provided business ideas, contacts, and financial input during their relationship to build her art gallery empire. The most outrageous and insulting part was the long list of supposed witnesses Ethan presented to support his utterly fabricated version of events. Names I didn't recognize, people who could supposedly confirm his deep involvement in Clara's initial, groundbreaking project. It was abundantly clear he had been preparing this malicious sham for a very long time. I immediately called Mr. Wallace to schedule an emergency meeting. When I arrived at his office that afternoon, I found him meticulously reviewing every page of the lawsuit with a grim, serious expression. "Robert, I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. Ethan has hired Christopher Vaughn, one of the most aggressive, ruthless inheritance lawyers in the city. He's notorious for winning complicated cases using dubious legal technicalities and calculated media pressure." "What does that mean for us?" I asked, feeling a cold wave of worry wash over me. "It means they're going to play dirty. Vaughn has a reputation for deliberately leaking damaging information to the press to create massive public pressure on his opponents. We'll undoubtedly see articles in every major paper about the selfish father denying the successful entrepreneur's grieving widower his rightful inheritance." Mr. Wallace was absolutely right. The very next day, a major tabloid paper published a sensational article titled "The Multi-Million-Dollar Battle for Clara Vance's Inheritance: Justice or Paternal Greed." The article, clearly and aggressively biased in Ethan's favor, presented a completely distorted and sickening version of the facts. According to the publication, Ethan was a successful partner who had sacrificed his own career to support his wife's artistic dreams and was now being unfairly excluded from the fruits of their marital collaboration. The article even included a manipulative photo of Ethan dressed in mourning at the funeral with a caption that read, "The pain of a husband fighting for justice." That same tumultuous week, while Mr. Wallace prepared our comprehensive legal response, I dedicated myself tirelessly to finding more definitive evidence of Ethan's true, despicable character. Mrs. Peterson had mentioned that Clara kept all her personal, sensitive documents in a large safe in her private gallery office, and that she had left me the access combination in case of any emergency. When I opened the heavy safe, I found a treasure trove of indisputable information. Clara had been incredibly meticulous in saving all correspondence related to her abrupt divorce, including the cruel, definitive emails Ethan had sent her years ago when he abandoned the marriage. In one email, Ethan bluntly wrote, "Clara, I need you to understand that this domesticity isn't working for me. I'm not ready to be a father, and frankly, your ridiculous obsession with opening an art business seems like a childish fantasy. I've decided to move away to start over immediately. Don't try to contact me." Another email was even more explicitly revealing. "I've emptied the joint account because I need that money to get established elsewhere. Consider it my compensation for the 2 years I completely wasted in this pointless marriage. I sincerely hope you find a way to pay the apartment debts without involving me further." But the single most valuable document was a handwritten, deeply emotional letter that Clara had drafted for her lawyer during the divorce proceedings. In it, she systematically detailed all of Ethan's cruel manipulations and absolute abandonment. "My husband, Ethan Shaw, voluntarily abandoned me upon learning of my pregnancy. In the following weeks, he cruelly emptied our joint bank account, stealing my personal savings. When I lost the baby due to the overwhelming stress, I tried to contact him to inform him, but he had blocked all means of communication. I formally request that the divorce decree explicitly states that Ethan waives any and all future rights to my assets or income. This letter was legally notarized and carried full, binding legal weight. It was the definitive, final proof that Ethan had voluntarily and explicitly waived all rights to Clara's estate. Armed with this irrefutable, devastating evidence, I returned to Mr. Wallace's office with renewed, burning confidence. When I showed him the documents, his professional expression changed completely. "Robert, this is absolute gold," he said with a genuine smile. "This notarized letter proves not only Ethan's voluntary abandonment, but also his explicit, legally binding waiver of all future rights. Any judge with a shred of common sense will dismiss his fraudulent lawsuit immediately." But Mr. Wallace also sternly warned me about the dirty tactics we could still expect. "Vaughn will try every trick in the book to discredit these documents. He'll allege that Clara was emotionally distraught during the divorce, or that circumstances have drastically changed. He'll also aggressively try to prove that Ethan contributed in some immaterial way to Clara's subsequent success. To strengthen our already powerful case, Mr. Wallace suggested we immediately find people who had known Ethan during his brief marriage to Clara to testify. We desperately need witnesses who can confirm his abandonment and his absolute lack of support for your daughter's vital business projects. I instantly remembered Helen Davis, Clara's fiercely loyal best friend since college. Helen had been a direct, heartbroken witness to my daughter's suffering during the divorce, and knew the devastating circumstances of Ethan's sudden abandonment perfectly. When I contacted Helen, she immediately and resolutely offered to testify in our favor. "Mr. Vance, I was with Clara the horrible night Ethan left her. I'll never, ever forget how she cried, telling me she felt betrayed not just as a wife, but as a human being. That man is an absolute coward, and he cannot show up now claiming rights he so casually gave up." Helen also provided me with crucial additional information about Ethan that I didn't know. During their marriage, Ethan never showed any interest in Clara's brilliant business plans. On the contrary, he always mercilessly ridiculed them, telling her it was a waste of time and money. He even cruelly forbade her from using her personal savings for the initial business consulting she desperately wanted to hire. With all these powerful elements now in place, Mr. Wallace began drafting our crushing response to the ridiculous lawsuit. But before officially filing it, we decided to take a strategic, public step that would immediately put Ethan in a very uncomfortable, exposed position. "Robert," Mr. Wallace instructed, "we're going to publicly ask the court to require Ethan to present documentary evidence of his supposed massive contribution to Clara's business success. If he really participated in the creation of her fortune, he must have signed contracts, receipts, investment records. We know he has none, but forcing him to try to produce them will definitively reveal the fraudulent nature of his entire claim to the world." That night, as I reviewed all the documents and recordings we had collected one final time, I felt a deep, profound mix of sadness for Clara's suffering and unshakable determination to honor her fight. Clara had been an extraordinary, resilient woman who built her immense success despite every betrayal and every abandonment. My final duty as a father was to protect her incredible legacy from the avaricious clutches of those who only saw her death as an opportunity for easy, undeserved enrichment. While Mr. Wallace was preparing our final legal response, Mrs. Peterson contacted me with absolutely crucial information that would completely change the devastating course of our case. She asked me to meet her at her apartment late one evening, assuring me she had something explosive and conclusive to show me. When I arrived at her place, Mrs. Peterson seemed nervous, but fiercely determined. Mr. Vance, after our last conversation, I suddenly remembered something vital. Clara didn't just ask me to record Ethan's harassing phone calls. She also had me install a highly sensitive recording system in her personal office after his first aggressive in-person meeting with her. Mrs. Peterson quickly turned on her laptop and showed me a folder packed full of audio files. Clara was incredibly cautious. When Ethan showed up, aggressively asking about her private finances, she rightly suspected he would try something truly terrible later. So, she decided to record any future meetings she might unfortunately have with him, just in case. Were there more meetings? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest, sensing I was about to discover the terrifying, cruel climax of his scheme. Yes, Mr. Vance, Mrs. Peterson confirmed. 2 meetings that Clara never told anyone about, not even you, and she immediately played the first recording. Hearing Clara's voice, weak from her illness, but impossibly firm in her resolve, a hard lump of emotion formed in my throat. She was obviously very sick, yet she maintained a terrifying dignity throughout the entire confrontation. Ethan, what exactly do you want after all these shameful years? I heard Clara demand. Clara, I know you're seriously ill, and I know you've been incredibly successful financially, Ethan replied, his voice sickly sweet with fake concern. I think it's high time we resolved our past issues amicably. We don't have past issues, Ethan, Clara shot back. You abandoned me when I needed you most, and I moved on with my life and success. Look, let's be practical, he persisted. You've built an empire of nearly $40 million. I was your husband for 2 crucial years of your life. Legally, I could claim a large part of that, but I'd much rather reach a friendly, private agreement. Clara's immediate response was a powerful punch of truth. Ethan, you have no right to what I've built. You signed explicit documents waiving any future claims when we divorced. Furthermore, everything I have, I built after you abandoned me, not before. Ah, but that's where you are legally mistaken, dear Clara, he countered. I've consulted with specialized lawyers, and it turns out some of those divorce documents have technical legal loopholes that could massively benefit me, especially if you pass away without a clear, final will that specifically excludes me. Those words, chillingly heard through the speaker, sent a fresh wave of pure disgust through me. Ethan wasn't merely planning to claim the inheritance after Clara's death. He was actively threatening her directly while she was dying. Are you actually threatening me, Ethan? Clara's voice asked, laced with clear incredulity and disbelief. It's not a threat, my dear. It's simply a legal reality. But as I said, I'd much rather resolve this civilly. If you give me, say, $5 million right now, we can sign a definitive document where I permanently waive any future claims. I will never give you a single cent, Clara hissed back. And if you try anything legal whatsoever, I assure you I will publicly reveal your true, despicable character and how you abandoned me when I was pregnant and vulnerable. Clara, I truly don't think you're in any position to threaten anyone, Ethan countered with cold cruelty. Your illness is terminal, and according to my own private medical information, you only have a few months left to live at most. Think about it seriously. $5 million now, or years of torturous legal trouble for your father and your family after you're gone. The recording ended abruptly with the sharp, resounding sound of a door being slammed shut. Mrs. Peterson explained that Clara had thrown Ethan out of her office, but he had aggressively returned 2 weeks later for an even more revealing, grotesque conversation. The second recording was played, And it was even more incriminating, as Ethan finally dropped all pretense and showed his true, naked, opportunistic nature. Clara, I've had a lot of time to think since our last chat. I've done more research into your financial situation, and I think I severely underestimated your total assets. My professional contacts in the financial sector tell me you could have up to $45 million in properties, investments, and cash reserves, he stated, clearly trying to bluff. Ethan, I don't know how you obtained that highly confidential information, but it is completely illegal and grossly inappropriate for you to be investigating my private finances, Clara responded, her fury evident. Look, let's just be brutally honest, he continued, completely ignoring her. You are going to die soon, and all that money is going to go somewhere. Your father is an old man who certainly doesn't need that much money. I'm 50, and I have my whole life ahead of me, a whole career to rebuild. We could easily make an arrangement that ultimately benefits everyone. An arrangement? Are you clinically insane, Ethan? Listen to me closely, Clara. I can and I will create massive legal problems for your father and your family after your death. I have lawyers who can easily prove our divorce was not processed correctly in certain arcane, technical aspects. We can drag out the legal proceedings for years, freezing all of your assets and utterly ruining your family's solid reputation. Ethan, you are truly despicable. I can't believe I was ever married to a monster like you. I'm merely a realist, Clara, and I'm going to make you one last, incredibly generous offer. You give me $15 million right now, and I guarantee your father will inherit the rest of your estate without any problems or public mess. If you refuse this definitive proposal, I guarantee you that I will fight ferociously for everything, and your family won't see a single dollar of your fortune without going through years of destructive legal battles and public humiliation. Clara's voice on the recording sounded exhausted, but determined and utterly resolute. Ethan, you had better hear me very clearly. I will never give you anything. I have personally modified my will specifically to legally exclude you from any inheritance whatsoever, and I have documented every single one of your threats. If you try anything after my death, my family will possess all the proof necessary to definitively show you are a shameless, criminal opportunist. We'll see about that, Clara. We'll see who truly has the last word in this matter. Mrs. Peterson immediately stopped the recording and looked at me with a grave, concerned expression. Mr. Vance, after this second, terrifying visit, Clara instructed me to immediately contact her lawyer, Mr. Wallace, to finalize the modifications to her will. She also strictly instructed me to keep these recordings in a completely safe place and give them directly to you if Ethan ever attempted any legal action after her death. It was astonishing. Clara, even in her final, painful days, had been fiercely protecting my future and her own memory from the greedy clutches of this manipulator. The recordings not only prove Ethan's deeply opportunistic intentions, but also his direct, chilling threats and his illegal, privileged knowledge of confidential financial information. Mrs. Peterson, how in God's name is Ethan getting all this specific information about Clara's finances? That's another crucial detail I found out. Mr. Vance, just recently, a bank employee discreetly contacted me. Apparently, Ethan had aggressively tried to bribe one of the tellers to obtain confidential information about Clara's personal accounts. The employee thankfully refused the bribe, but Ethan relentlessly insisted multiple times over several weeks, she concluded, adding another serious crime to Ethan's growing criminal record: attempted bribery and illegal access to confidential banking information. With this devastating new evidence, our case was not only utterly solid for defending the inheritance, but we could now also confidently press serious criminal charges against Ethan. That night, I called Mr. Lone Wallace to urgently tell him about the recordings. His reaction was one of pure, stunned astonishment. "Robert, with this evidence, not only are we going to decisively win the civil case, but Ethan could face severe criminal charges for threats, attempted extortion, and illegal access to financial information. This completely changes our strategy. Robert, we are no longer simply playing defense. We are going on the full attack." For the first time since Clara's death, I felt that true justice was finally and firmly on our side. My daughter, even from the cold safety of her grave, had managed to completely protect her hard-earned legacy and give me the necessary weapons to confront this vulture who thought he could heartlessly take advantage of our deepest pain. With all this devastating information, Mr. Wallace and I decided to immediately contact the District Attorney's Economic Crimes Division to present a much broader case against Ethan. The assigned prosecutor, Robert Navarro, was instantly and deeply interested in the comprehensive evidence we had collected. "Gentlemen, what you're presenting to me is not merely a case of fraudulent inheritance, but rather a systematic, ongoing criminal operation that has been running for an entire decade," Prosecutor Navarro told us with gravity. "With the testimonies from the other victims and the solid evidence you possess, we can successfully prosecute Ethan Peterson for continuous fraud, severe threats, blackmail, and organized racketeering." But the most shocking revelation came when Mrs. Peterson contacted me again with crucial information she had discovered while meticulously reviewing Clara's old business files. "Mr. Vance, I've found something extremely disturbing in Clara's call logs from last year," she reported. "During November and December of 2023, Ethan was not only calling her directly, but had also been persistently contacting several of the store's key clients and suppliers, aggressively asking about the financial health of the business. Mrs. Peterson showed me an extensive list of more than 20 business contacts that Ethan had tried to question about Clara's finances. Some of these suppliers even called me at the time to ask if they should give him information because Ethan was falsely presenting himself as a family consultant hired by Clara to evaluate the business. Did Clara know about these treacherous contacts? Yes, Mr. Vance. That's precisely why she immediately tightened security measures at the company and installed the recording systems. Mrs. Peterson confirmed. Clara strongly suspected Ethan was planning something big, but we never imagined it would be so meticulously systematic and utterly cruel. That additional information definitively proved that Ethan had been planning his malicious strategy to seize the inheritance for at least 6 months before Clara's death. He wasn't an impromptu opportunist, but a cold, calculated predator who had been patiently waiting for my daughter's moment of greatest vulnerability to execute his entire plan. On June 10th, Prosecutor Navarro informed me that Ethan had been formally charged with 10 different, serious criminal counts. Mr. Vance, thanks to your perseverance and the overwhelming evidence you provided, we are going to prosecute this individual for all his crimes, he stated firmly. The other victims you located have also decided to courageously testify, so Ethan will face decades in prison if convicted. That night, as I quietly organized all the case documents, I reflected on the true extent of Ethan's deep evil. He hadn't simply been an opportunistic ex-husband trying to grab a fortune. He was a professional, systematic criminal who had turned the suffering and tragedy of others into his entire way of life. Clara, without fully knowing it, had become the pivotal victim who finally exposed Ethan's entire insidious criminal network. Her courage to meticulously document his threats and her incredible foresight to protect the evidence had not only saved our family inheritance, but had put a definitive end to a decade of crimes against innocent people. On June 18th, 2024, when it seemed the case was finally resolved and Ethan would face the inevitable consequences of his actions, I received a call that completely changed my perspective on everything I had experienced over these agonizing months. It was from Hope Vance, a woman who identified herself as Clara's second cousin and worked as a nurse in Philadelphia. "Robert, I've been following Ethan's case closely in the news, and I strongly think there's something else you absolutely need to know about Clara's death," she said, her voice clearly choked with deep emotion. Her words sent a fresh, sharp chill down my spine. "What do you mean, something else? I'd much rather tell you everything in person. Could you possibly come to Philadelphia this weekend? It directly concerns Clara's last days in the hospital." The trip to Philadelphia was one of the most agonizing of my entire life. During the long drive, my mind created increasingly terrible, unimaginable scenarios about what Hope might reveal to me. We met at her apartment on Saturday morning. Hope, a 52-year-old woman with 20 years of experience in oncology, greeted me with a grave, weary expression and a stack of confidential medical documents in her trembling hands. Robert, a colleague of mine from Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago, contacted me after seeing the news about Ethan. She told me something that had been seriously bothering her since Clara's death, but she hadn't dared to report it until now. Hope immediately showed me official hospital visitor logs that her colleague had discreetly copied. According to these documents, Ethan visited Clara in the hospital on 3 separate occasions during March, always when you were not present. The visits were on March 5th, 12th, and 19th. "That's utterly impossible," I immediately replied, my voice shaking. Clara had expressly forbidden me from allowing any visits from Ethan. Besides, I was practically living at the hospital during her last days. "Exactly. That's precisely why these visits are so strange," Hope explained. According to the official records, Ethan presented himself as Clara's legal husband and had forged documents that supposedly gave him authorization to visit her specifically during the late-night shifts. Hope continued to explain what her colleague had observed. During the visit on March 19th, just 3 days before Clara's death, Ethan was alone in the room for over 2 hours. The nurse on duty found it extremely strange that Clara was very agitated and distressed immediately after that visit, and that her vital signs had worsened significantly. "Are you suggesting that Ethan might have—" I couldn't bring myself to finish the horrific sentence. "I'm not suggesting anything specific, Robert, but my colleague told me that Clara urgently asked her that night not to allow any more visits from Ethan, and that she was very scared. She also mentioned something chilling about not letting him force me to sign anything." Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. Had Ethan actually tried to force Clara to change her will during her final, agonizing days? Had he ruthlessly used her vulnerable state to pressure her while I wasn't there? Hope handed me a copy of the official nursing notes from that terrible night. They read, "Patient very agitated after family visit. Requests no more visits from husband. Mentions concern over legal documents. Mild sedative administered to calm anxiety." "Robert, there's one more thing," Hope whispered. "My colleague checked the hospital's security cameras from that night. Ethan left the room carrying a large folder he absolutely didn't have when he went in. I immediately called Mr. Joel Wallace from Philadelphia to inform him of these terrifying revelations. His reaction was one of total, immediate alarm. "Robert, we need to investigate this immediately. If Ethan tried to coerce Clara during her terminal illness to modify legal documents, we would be talking about a much, much more serious crime. Get back to Chicago right away." On Monday morning, Mr. Wallace and I met urgently with Prosecutor Navarro to present this crucial new evidence. The prosecutor immediately ordered all hospital security cameras to be reviewed, and all staff who were on duty during Ethan's visits to be thoroughly questioned. 3 days later, the prosecutor summoned us with information that surpassed our absolute worst suspicions. Gentlemen, we have reviewed the security footage and confirmed that Ethan Peterson illegally visited Clara Vance on multiple occasions using falsified documentation. The prosecutor began gravely. More seriously, we have found in Ethan's possession a copy of Clara's original will with handwritten modifications that clearly intended to include him as a beneficiary of 40% of the inheritance. These modifications are explicitly dated March 19th, the very same day as his last visit to the hospital. Are you saying Ethan literally tried to forge Clara's will? I asked, feeling pure outrage completely consume me. Exactly, he confirmed. We have strong evidence that Ethan brought forged documents to Clara's room and aggressively tried to force her to sign modifications to the will. According to the nurse's testimony, Clara flatly refused and threatened to report him, which would completely explain her agitated, terrified state that night. Mr. Wallace intervened immediately. Prosecutor Navarro, this clearly constitutes coercion of a sick person, forgery of documents, and possibly attempted murder if the extreme stress caused contributed to Clara's rapid deterioration. Correct, Mr. Wallace. We have immediately added these severe charges to the indictment against Ethan Peterson, Navarro confirmed. He now faces the possibility of up to 25 years in prison. But the most shocking revelation came when the prosecutor showed us the full contents of the folder Ethan had taken from the hospital. In addition to the forged will, Ethan had prepared comprehensive power of attorney documents that would have given him total, absolute control over Clara's assets if she had miraculously survived in a vegetative or incapacitated state. What does that terrifying mean? I asked, numbly. It means Ethan had a Machiavellian backup plan, the prosecutor explained. If Clara didn't die immediately, he would have tried to declare her mentally incapacitated and ruthlessly assume control of her entire fortune as her caregiver husband. It was a sinister plan designed to seize the $40 million regardless of whether Clara lived or died. That revelation affected me profoundly. For all these months, I had thought Ethan was merely a greedy opportunist who had shown up after Clara's death to claim money. Now I discovered he had been infinitely worse. A true predator who had been actively stalking my daughter during her final, most sacred days, trying to take advantage of her extreme vulnerability to steal everything she had built. There's one more thing, Mr. Vance, the prosecutor concluded. We've found irrefutable evidence that Ethan had been ruthlessly monitoring Clara's health status through illegal contacts in the hospital system. He knew exactly when she would be most vulnerable and planned his visits accordingly. When we left the prosecutor's office that afternoon, Mr. Wallace put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Robert, I know these revelations are unbearably painful, but they also prove something immensely important. Clara fought until the very end to protect her legacy and yours. Even in her final days, she stood up to Ethan and refused to give in to his monstrous pressure. That night, in the solitude of my home, I reread the letters Clara had written to me during her illness one last time. In one of them, dated March 20th, just 2 days before her death, there was a single line that now took on a terrifying new meaning. Dad, if anything happens to me, please make absolutely sure my will is respected. Don't let anyone manipulate what we've built together. Clara had known exactly what Ethan was trying to do, and she had fought with her last breath to protect our future. Her extraordinary courage and determination had not only preserved the family inheritance, but had completely exposed the true, chilling criminal nature of a man who had made the suffering of others his entire way of life. If you liked this story, hit the like button, subscribe to Revendor, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left. Thanks for watching.